Welcome to the Mormon Truth Video Library. We're in the third video on the Joseph Jackson in Nauvoo series, revealing the spiritual wife system, the Danites, and maybe even we'll get into the Council of 50. All the abominations that were taking place under the nose of the saints, and almost no one knew of the secret doctrines being practiced of spiritual wifeism. Seeing the impossibility of effecting what I desired and having no idea of attempting what Joe sent me for, I resolved to return to Nauvoo. Previous to taking my departure, however, I wrote to Mr. Wilson and directed my letter to Point Coupee, Louisiana, supposing it would reach him there, but it appears that he never received it. Having been in Independence 1 week without effecting anything, I set out on my journey. My trip back was very pleasant, the roads having become settled and the weather dry. I struck the Mississippi at Churchville, crossed to Warsaw, and thence journeyed to Nauvoo. On my arrival I rode to the house of the prophet, where all seemed glad to see me, and Sister Emma, Joe's wife, received me very cordially. The prophet not being at home, since I have introduced this lady to the reader, I will mention that although she is acquainted with all the villainous plans and operations of Joe, yet she should be looked upon with pity rather than scorn. I believe she knew no guile until Joe schooled her to wink at his rascality, and compelled her by threats to aid in carrying out his measures. Indeed, he has frequently said that it was with the greatest difficulty that he could prevail on Emma, in many cases, to hold her peace and not expose him to the world. In order to amuse myself until the prophet's return, I strolled over the city, and was surprised to find so much attention paid to me, and that many, especially the women, knew all about my expedition to Missouri. Convinced me that Joe could not keep his secrets, but I could not know at this time that he had so many wives to whom to disclose them. When night came on, the prophet returned. He seemed glad to see me, and taking me by the hand, led me into a private room, and commenced his inquiries about Porter Rockwell. He fixed his eyes steadily on me, while I gave an account of my stewardship, and suffered me to proceed about half through without interruption, when suddenly exclaimed, "Oh, did you kill old Boggs?" "No," said I, "he was not at home." And this was the fact, as good luck would have it, and it gave me an excellent excuse. Joe seemed to regret this very much, but soon returned to Rockwell's case, and prophesied in the name of the Lord that he would, after passing through fiery ordeal of the Missouri tribulation, come safely home. He said he knew they could prove nothing against him, for he was a true man, and they could not make him own a word of it if he was guilty. Silence ensued for a few minutes, when Joe suddenly looked me full in the eye, and after gazing steadily for a few moments said, "Jackson, you are the first man that I have ever met that I could not look down." Said I, "Do you like a bold eye?" He replied that he did. Then commenced a panegyric on himself. He said that he was a good and godly man, and that he had never known any wrong in his life, for in all his acts he was guided and protected by the power of the Holy Ghost. That the Missourians had tried to kill him, but rifle balls could have no effect on him, for he had been shot at 13 times in Missouri, and the balls bounded back as hail upon the side of a house, and for this reason he knew the Holy Ghost was with him, and that he truly was the greatest man on the earth. To this I replied that it was altogether unnecessary for him to preach rascality to me in the name of the Lord, for the more he did, the less I should think of him. I then related what had occurred to me the previous fall in Nauvoo, giving him a full account of my being shot at, not letting him know, however, that I suspected him or cared anything about it. My object was to learn from his own lips, by seeming indifference to the matter, whether he in reality had been black-hearted enough to send a man to perform so dastardly an act. He, however, pretended perfect innocence, and could divine no reason why I had been shot at. Here ended our conversation for the evening, and Joe took me upstairs to my chamber. As he bade me good night, he pronounced the blessing of God on my head, and said that he never loved a stranger as he did me, and that he had trusted me further for a short acquaintance than he had ever done any man before. But, said he, you must kill old Boggs, and I will build you up in the world. In order to fathom the depths of Joe's villainy, I was obliged to appease to him as an abandoned wretch, an outcast. When I told him I was a fugitive from justice and had committed the darkest crimes, it seemed to give him the greatest confidence, and he immediately run away with the idea that he could, through me, fulfill his prophecies. And then, on the top of it, he would urge me to carry out his measures in the name of the Lord. About 3 days after my return from Missouri, Joe had his carriage brought out and invited me to take a ride with him. And this is where we go to the next video. But first, a point that I'd like to make. Well, at this point, if you've never thought or had it occur to you that Joseph Smith was anything other than the folkloric Paul Bunyan-like hero that he's made out to be in Priesthood and Relief Society manuals, then this probably is seeming absurd or a very rude awakening. Probably you wouldn't even believe these things unless you've already noticed that there are big holes in his story, that the LDS scriptures are filled with contradiction, with Jesus contradicting himself, which obviously would not occur with an all-knowing, unchanging, all-wise God. And maybe you've noticed that the brethren don't tell the truth, that they're extremely deceptive on LDS.org, especially in the gospel topics essays, as they're called. They're actually apologetics, doing the opposite of what they say they would do. They said they would be offering straightforward, in-depth essays, and said the Lord didn't want us to have just one set of opinions. And they give us one set of, not even an opinion, really, a biased argument, and neglect the scriptures and everything else that contradicts what they're disavowing and denying. Well, if you begin to notice these things and say, hey, something just doesn't fit right, I keep trying to pound a round peg into a square hole to make my belief work, when this may be an awakening. When you see the other testimonies from people like Sarah Pratt, who was the wife of Apostle Orson Pratt, and others like Nancy Rigdon, daughter of Sidney, or William Law's wife Jane, all who were approached by Joseph Smith with very improper ideas, you begin to see that reputable people had major problems with him. And the story just is much different when we look at the primary source documents than with the correlated material fed to us on LDS.org. So to get to the next video, if you don't have a link, although I'll put one in the description, you'll want to go into the channel, which is the channel button's just left of the subscribe button. Probably should subscribe. There are over 70 videos, and things are carefully documented on many of them if I'm not summarizing. Hop into the channel and explore truth. It'll be documented, and you can just see for yourself. You don't have to depend on the Holy Ghost to tell you it's true. I've cataloged these contradictions in various videos, including ones that review gospel topics essays from LDS.org and point out exactly what they're doing, so you can see it for yourself, as you can see it for yourself in the scriptures and the ones that I do on the scriptures, showing forth the terrible contradiction that we've got going, and basically breaking up the false narrative that we've been fed and believe because we've heard it maybe so many times. As they tell you on LDS.org gospel topics essays, they say that's the only way to really know anything. They say we can't know, we can't discern, we don't have enough data on issue after issue, when in fact they've ignored the most pertinent data, especially the scriptures they contradict. So yes, we do and we can think. So look at the data. You can tell green from red.